Hello, Courage Champions. Welcome to week 2. We are in day 8 of the 25-day Courage Challenge, and I'm excited to introduce to you what we're going to be talking about all week long, which is radical responsibility and ownership. And radical responsibility and ownership does take courage, but there's the reason that we're going to talk about that is that if you don't have an attitude of radical responsibility, what sometimes can happen under stress is that you could end up in a state of dependency with the people either that you work with or the people that you really care about at home in your families. And so what I want to start with is just to contrast the difference between ownership and dependency. When we are in I don't know if you've ever read the Harvard Business Review by William Oncken Jr. He wrote, it's been a while, but it's a classic article, and it's called Management Time, Who's Got the Monkey? And it talks about a big leadership problem that can occur in the workplace where leaders will pick up extra monkeys of responsibility, often in a state of stress, so that they can gain approval or perhaps try to control or fix something that's broken because they're in a bit of a state of stress or fear. So the idea is that if you take on someone else's problem and put that monkey of responsibility on your back instead of keeping it where it belongs, what you do is you disempower the other person that you're having a relationship, whether it's an employee-employer relationship or whether it's some sort of a relationship on the personal side of your life. And what that can do is create a culture of dependency, obligation, rather than ownership and engagement. And so the reason we want to bring this up this week is to identify any area in your life where you may be carrying some dependency or having some dependency in some of the relationships you have, and give you the tools to have the courage to turn that relationship around and create ownership and keep responsibility where it belongs. So before we start the week, I just want to kind of recap some of the things that we talked about last week with the instinctive mind and why we can fall into the trap, so that you just understand what to be aware of. It's almost like understanding that you have a kryptonite, and I'm going to share with you what the antidote for the kryptonite is. But in case you stepped into kryptonite and you ever feel that you are trying to control or fix something, the reason that's happening is because your instinctive mind has been activated due to some sort of a stressor. Now, we all have these things called judges. Positive Intelligence wrote a book about the saboteur, the fact that all of us as human beings have a saboteur, and it's the judge voice that tells you with absolute words, that, hey, don't do that. Hey, you better hurry up and fix this, or you're going to be in big trouble. And, it's a very absolute telling voice, not an asking voice. And when the instinctive mind, which is last week we talked about Lenny the lizard, right? I said there's 3 parts to your mind. You have your instinctive mind, you have which is the lizard, you have which comes from your protection system, and then you have the Ellie the elephant, which is your subconscious mind, and you have the monkeys that you want to give a goal to keep you pointed in a direction so you don't drift. So those 3 parts of the mind, when Lenny gets activated from stress, what can happen is you can default to your stress triggers, and your saboteur can start to take over. And when that saboteur takes over, you can start to pick up other people's responsibilities inadvertently if you don't know what's going on. So every time that you are under high stress, the judge voice is going to kick in, and you have to recognize what it sounds like. And what your brain does is it amplifies any kind of negative thing that you're focused on 3 to 1. So the judge voice is going to try to control what's happening outside of you. And your inner child response really is having you pick up burdens that you shouldn't have to pick up. So what we want to do this week is build our sage powers as an antidote so that the saboteur doesn't win. And so I'm in your notes today, you're going to get 2 resources. One link is going to take you to a book called Mastery of Self, which explains how you got your saboteur. And it's a great book to read. I think you'll really enjoy it. But if you have any issues in your life, either on the personal and the business side, where you feel like you're picking up responsibilities that belong to somebody else, great book to read. The other thing that I'm going to give you a link to is there's a saboteur assessment that's free by Positive Intelligence, and you can learn a little bit more about some of the. You can take the assessment, and it'll give you an idea of what your saboteur sounds like and some of the behaviors you do, so you can recognize when you're starting to step into quicksand and hitting your kryptonite, and why you're falling into that trap. But what you want to do this week, what the challenge is going to be, is for you to start recognizing what pulls you into the trap of picking up people's responsibilities. And if you have any of those situations going on right now, what you're going to do this week is, one by one, take radical responsibility and have some conversations to put the responsibility back where it belongs. And another article resource that I'm going to give you is on responsibility. It was written by Bob Proctor, but the big lesson that I learned from him when I got to spend some time with him in 2019 is that, and it was a big lesson for me, because I had a codependency situation in my first marriage, which is why it ended in divorce. It has a lot to do with learning how to communicate with people and learning how to recognize this kryptonite and take responsibility. Radical responsibility is the antidote to get you out of that kryptonite and that dependency. And as a leader, if you have been doing any work for other people and you're not putting that responsibility where it belongs, it's a great opportunity to build some courage and put the responsibility back where it belongs. So we're going to give you the guides to do that, but the whole game is, the more that you do it and the more that you can recognize what pulls you in the trap, the easier and faster it's going to be for you to recover. This is going to be something that is not going to go away. You're always going to get tempted to fall into the trap, but the whole thing is to start really observing your behavior. And if you recognize what's pulling you into that trap, and if you read the book on Mastery of Self and you really understand how you got some of these triggers, what triggers your stress, and you can get that stress minimized and your serenity up, you basically won't be focusing your energy and attention on Lenny the lizard and activating that instinctive mind. You'll be able to keep flipping back to your goal and your purpose, to pull you out of the quicksand and taking radical responsibility. But the main thing that I had to learn about codependency is that the reason we when we think we have to prove something to someone, or we're under stress and we think the worst is going to happen, that's usually the time we activate Lenny the lizard, and that's when we can fall into the trap of trying to control and fix things that are outside of you, instead of saying, hey, wait a minute, this is not my responsibility and I can't do this, but I do need to have a conversation and express some things to the other person if the responsibilities are not being met. Now, the reason we want to do that is to give that person a gift, because anytime that you start doing something that somebody else is supposed to do, you're robbing them of their self-esteem, and then it deteriorates the relationship, because they always feel like you're going to do things that they're supposed to be doing. So they say, what's the point? And then it really ruins the relationship. And in organizations, as a leader, it's very deadly. So today's courage challenge really is for you to take that saboteur assessment and start to get familiar with the voice and what are some of the things that pull you into the trap of dependency, where you try to control or fix anything outside of you, and when you're sometimes picking up responsibility that somebody else should own. And then we're going to talk this week and give you exercises on how to have those conversations to put the responsibility back where it belongs. So this should free you up. This should make you a lot more serene. You will, through time and practice, the goal is that you become more serene. You don't get shaken up by things like you used to. You just don't get triggered anymore, because as soon as you understand what your triggers are and what your kryptonite is and what the trap is, the faster you'll be able to see it, and the faster you say, oh, I'm not going down that trap anymore. And then as you build the muscles to have those conversations with the other person to explain, hey, we need to sit down and talk, because there's some black and white responsibilities of things I need to do, things you need to do. There is going to be some gray areas, but I can't be taking on your monkeys. Those monkeys need to reside where they belong, and you need to carry them, and you're going to feel really good about carrying them. And it's one of those situations where if you've been carrying the monkeys for somebody a long time and enabling them and enabling some dependence, it's going to take some courage to face those people and say, I'm not playing the game anymore. But the more that you do it, the more freedom that you're going to experience. And so I'll conclude by saying that, that was probably my first big leadership lesson, was actually going through a divorce and saying no to being in a codependent relationship and walking away from it. But now, 20 years later, my first husband and I get along great. But he's the people where you give the monkey back and you put the responsibility back actually really admire and thank you for doing that, having the courage to stand up and have that conversation. Even though they don't like it in the beginning, they're going to, in the end, be in a better place. And you've given them a really gift when you stand in your courage and you put responsibility back where it belongs. So that's this week's lesson to think about. And again, remember, the reason why you can fall into the trap is not your fault. It's a human being thing. But it is your responsibility, your radical responsibility, to recognize that now that you're an adult, you have to recognize what triggers you. And when you learn how to manage those stress triggers so Lenny doesn't stay in charge, and instead your conscious monkeys, you give them a goal and an aim. And that's, you get into purpose and the impact of what you want to make, the impact that you want to have on others, and your stewardship and giving your gifts and leaving a legacy of impact that you're proud of. That's what's going to help you stay out of the trap. And it takes radical responsibility and ownership, saying, I own this. I'm not going to do these enabling behaviors. I own it, and I'm going to make a change. And even if nobody likes me in the beginning, I'm going to do it anyway, because it's a gift ultimately. And I never want to rob another person of their self-esteem by taking on monkeys and responsibilities that are not mine and they're theirs. So that's a challenge for this week. It's going to be fun. And if you have any questions or comments, put them in the Facebook group. And I'm excited to hear how you make out with these exercises this week. Again, remember, the theme for week 2 is all about ownership, not dependency, and having the courage to stand in the ownership and keep responsibility where it belongs. And the only thing you're responsible for is your attitude, your results, and the way that you're going to respond. Because the way another person reacts is their karma, but the way you respond is yours. So Have a great week, and let's keep that courage flame going and build those muscles. Have a good week. Bye.